With Joe giving us a summary, then we're going to go to Alyssa for a further explanation of what's going on. With us this evening is Tracy, and select person Cindy, and me, and Joe, and Mark Beauregard in the audience, and we have Rebecca Carmichael and Daryl and Alyssa on Zoom. Go ahead, Joe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So tonight is, I believe, workshop number 3 in total. And it's the night that we talk about the development district. Hi, Shelley. We're just getting going.
Shelley.
So we talk about the development plan, I should say, which is a document that spells out pretty much the necessary information. So to this point, you've talked about geographic boundaries. You've given some input and kind of guided and directed that process, so we know where the physical boundary is. Since that happened, Rebecca from our office, Matt, our assessor from this office, Alyssa and Daryl have worked on getting the values from each of those parcels, putting them together, and then as you'll see in this document as we go through it, kind of making and they added it all together, and you can see the value of projected value of those parcels and what it might look like over time. And I don't want to get too far off track, but that's really where we've begun, where we started, and how we got where we're at now. So you've defined the physical boundaries, and now you have in front of you a draft development program from Omnibus Downtown Tax Increment Financing District. And Alyssa is an expert on this, Mr. Chairman. I would defer to her at this point for more detail.
Okay, Alyssa, thank you.
Great. Joe, I would give yourself more credit than that, because you've picked up a significant amount in a short amount of time. I've worked with a lot of managers who struggle with even the distinction between a district and a development program, and you've mastered that. So kudos to you. I prepared a brief outline, which I think you all have, to guide our conversation. And this is really just essentially the highlights of the relevant terms that are in the development program, but maybe not so easy to find. And so this helps you get a sense of, one, the conversations that we've been having in the last 2 workshops about the elements that the statute requires to be included in a development program. And the development program includes a lot of language to address those statutory requirements. And many of the elements that we talked about sort of in theory in the last 2 meetings, we're now at a point of having made a decision to put before you in this draft. And so these are the key terms. The development program draft that you have includes all of these items with a lot more narrative, which is really helpful, but we wanted to break it down for you to kind of just talk about the key terms of the development program draft and to pull those out. So I'll review those really quickly with you. These are, again, all things that have to be included in the development program. And so if from my perspective, when you're considering adopting a TIF district, if there's any one of these items that gives you pause or you have questions about, those are things that we ought to be addressing at this point before we move forward and finalize both the TIF district, but in particular, the development program. So I'll go through those, and then I've also included just kind of a recap of next steps. We are continue to be on track, which is awesome. In terms of process, I think it's been really, really well thought out and well coordinated. I won't take any credit on my behalf, but on everyone else's behalf here. So that's been really great. And so we'll cover those dates as well. As to the development program, you'll see in the outline, and Joe alluded to or referenced to this. This is what's known as an omnibus downtown TIF district, and it's a bit of an odd term. It's not defined in the statute. It's not defined in any of the TIF regulations or rules, but it's generally used in practice to define or identify a TIF district that authorizes credit enhancement agreements. That's essentially the key to the term omnibus. And so that's what's being proposed here, is that to to the extent the town wants to in the future, you're authorizing yourselves to consider credit enhancement agreements with developers. There's certainly no guarantee that that would happen, and you are making no commitments, but you're giving yourselves the option going forward. So that's the reference to omnibus, and this is in fact a downtown TIF district, which we've talked about in the past couple meetings in terms of the difference between a regular TIF district and a downtown TIF district. The proposal right now for the area of the district encompasses 677.97 acres. As we talked about briefly in earlier meetings, there are acreage and assessed value limitations on TIF districts, but they don't apply to downtown TIF districts. So that's not a concern in this case, but it's helpful to know what the general area is. We've included in the development program a 30-year term, which is the maximum under the statute. That would begin, which is the latest date, July 1 of 2021. So it begins in the fiscal year after the tax year in which it's designated. Now it's being designated in this tax year, April 1, 2020, and it would go through June 30th of 2051 if it was for the full 30 years. Based on the geographical area of the TIF district and the acreage that I just referenced, that equates to an original assessed value, meaning the base value as of today, as of April 1 of this year, for all of those properties in the district of $110,075,400. So that's the value as of March 31st of this year. That'll establish your base. All of the tax revenue on that value will continue to go to the town's general fund. Any tax revenue on value that exists or is created in the future on top of that value will be your TIF revenue. That's the amount that's going to be captured and that will be used. So to that end, the tricky part of creating these districts is we have to look into our crystal ball and figure out how much money or how much value might be created in this district. And that's difficult to do when there aren't specific projects in the pipeline or at least on the horizon that you can estimate. So there are two ways of doing that, both of which the town has done here. One of those is to look at a historical average of increase in value year after year over a specified period of time. And I know Daryl worked with the town's assessor to take a look at an 11-year period and come up with an average increase over each of those years. And the assessor's estimate was just over $17 million of new value over the 30-year district term. The alternative method, or neither one is necessarily preferred, but they're just both options. And typically we like to do both just to check them against one another, is to also look at potential new development. And so I know Daryl did the exercise of thinking about what is on the horizon for potential projects on any of the properties within the district, and to try to assign some values to those. Those usually ramp up over time and are incremental because it takes some time to develop them and the value doesn't come in on year one. So that's what's projected in the development program that shows an increase over time of a few $1 million each year up to a total new value of $17 million, which sort of helped us prove the theory that these two methods are a really great check against one another, as both Daryl in that method and the assessor in his method arrived at essentially the same value for estimated increased assessed value here. So I spend a little bit of time on that one because that's really the basis of the majority of our assumptions in the development program going forward. We have to base our estimates of new tax revenue and estimates of tax shifts that result from capturing that value, all of which have to be spelled out in multiple places in the development program on that $17 million estimate. So I like to highlight that for you to have a sense of how that came to be, how we got here, and why we're using that. So this assumes that of that $17 million of potential new assessed value in the district, that the town would capture 100% of that value and thereby capture 100% of the tax revenue on that new value. So as I said before, the tax on the original assessed value continues to go to the town's general fund. The tax that gets captured is the revenue on this new 17 million. And that happens in the years in which that assessed value is actually generated. You'll see here I've highlighted, and this is in more detail in the development program, that based on this assumption of $17 million of new value, that would generate an average of $216,365 of TIF revenue each year. That totals just shy of $6.5 million over the entire 30-year district term. For comparison, in the tax shift spreadsheet is included in the development program for your review, but the highlights are here again. For comparison, if you did not capture that $17 million of increased value, the net new tax revenue to the town would be an average of $132,960 per year, which is a total of just shy of $4 million over 30 years. And that is the result of having new value that is calculated for purposes of the town's state aid to education, the town's share of county tax, and the town's revenue sharing from the state. All of those things are impacted by additional valuation, and by sheltering the $17 million, you avoid the impacts of those things. And so that's what these numbers here are showing and are outlined in more detail in the development program. And then lastly, before I'll stop so that you can all, hopefully not tiring of me, the uses of TIF revenue that are outlined in the development program, which is also required and really critical. We talked about those in our last two meetings. There's a lengthy list in the statute that authorizes municipalities to spend TIF revenue on specified things, project costs. Those public project costs that the town would spend TIF revenue on are outlined in what's called Table 1. That's shown on pages 6 and 7 in the development program. And that's pretty detailed. I mean, that's a long list of whatever we could come up with that is an eligible cost that the town might be interested in, so that we can cast a wide net here, since you don't have specific projects necessarily in mind, or you might have many and you want to cover certain costs. And then secondly, credit enhancement agreements, as we talked about a little bit earlier, because we're designating this as an omnibus district, section 3.05 of the development program, which is on page 10, gives the town the authority to, at a future date, provided that you actually want to offer it, and on the terms and conditions that would be negotiated at that time, offer and enter into a credit enhancement agreement with a developer of a particular project within the district. So those are really the highlights of the draft development program, and I will pause there and either turn it over to Daryl or Joe or entertain any questions.
Okay, before we turn it over to Daryl, questions from the board? Yes, Cindy.
So just to reiterate, we can't change the length of the TIF. If we go in at 30 years, it's a 30-year TIF. However, we can adjust the capture rate. That's what concerns me is for the public to see this as some value, but them not giving up everything that could come their way to help, to help with property taxes. Mm-hmm. So the 100% scares me, as far as being able to, for the public to buy in. So I'm just going to put that out there. It's just my own feelings, because this is so complicated. But we can adjust the capture percentage during the life of the TIF, correct?
You can, and we can make sure that we are drafting it very clearly that the town is authorizing itself to capture up to 100% of the increased assessed value. We can also add some additional language, which I have done in other TIF districts, and DECD has accepted, to say that will be an annual vote of the selectmen through your budget process. So if you want to review this on an annual basis to determine what the appropriate capture rate will be, you can do that. We can give you the authority to do that. It won't require an amendment. It will just require notification to DECD so that they have a current record of what you're capturing.
It does not require a town vote?
It does not require a town vote. So we would make that in the development program, we would specify that would be the authority of the Board of Selectmen on an annual basis.
Anything else from the board up to this point? Cindy,
I think I'm all set right now.
Mark, do you have any questions?
I do. One is on the chart of potential public facilities improvements and programs. It's fairly general, but I was wondering who sets the priorities for those under this program?
You want to answer that, Melissa, or Daryl?
Yeah, I could speak to that. Mark, those priorities were set. First, there were a number of priorities listed in the 2019 Rangeley Downtown Revitalization Action Plan. And then several meetings with the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee and different meetings with the select board throughout the process. Those priorities were listed as the ones that were in the development plan. So we took all that to heart. And so we first had to make sure that the categories and the activities that we wanted to see funded utilizing some of the TIF funds would comply with the state. And that's where Alyssa checked all of that. And so we have a wide net for flexibility, but we do have specific projects defined, everything from broadband to streetscapes improvements to help blighted properties, street lights. It's all in there, Mark, and that's how we arrived at that listing. And the beauty of having the wide net approach in the development program, table 1 on those 2 pages, is that it gives us local flexibility to be able to precisely say, well, this is the area of the streetscapes we would like to see improved, whether it's Main Street, or here's another public infrastructure project that we want to do for sidewalks. But we didn't have to specifically say, this is the exact street that we're doing, because the town will determine that through that local process.
That wasn't exactly my question, Dan. I apologize for not being clear. I was wondering if it came down to, when you go to prioritize things, whether it's broadband or a new set of sidewalks or something like that, who decides what
Yeah,
the current project is at the top of the list?
yes, they're all equally important priorities, whether it's sidewalks, roads, streetscapes, or broadband. It's all in there as the priority. So sometimes when an opportunity comes that broadband is badly needed, because if we improve that capability, it's going to help our business climate and bring on more development, then broadband is as equal of importance as a priority of projects to do. So some of that might be, there's a funding opportunity, Mark, where, hey, we could apply for $500,000 or something. And the town might have to have a leverage match to go get those funds. So we can use TIF funds for that.
Okay, hang on, Daryl, just 1 second, go ahead.
What I'm trying to get at is who makes the decision? Who makes the vote of whether?
All right, the question is, who makes the decision in the priority list? Is it opportunistic, or is there a defined list that's identified by either the Board of Selectmen, or is it the town?
It's all of the above, Stephen. How that works, the Economic Committee is an advisory group. They flesh out the different things that seem of the most importance through the Economic Development Committee. And then we make recommendations, sometimes for additional funding through the town budget process. But then the actual decision to move forward on some of these projects would pretty much lie with the select board.
Answer your question, Mark?
So it's the selectmen that have the ultimate decision on which project will move forward.
That's what he just, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Darrell. That's
And you're welcome. And also with that process, Mark and everyone, I would work closely with Joe Roach and the town department heads and others who may be aware of certain projects that need doing. So we sort of marriage those things together and then come up with, well, this is what we feel is the more critical issues we need to look at doing. And then the select board would make that decision.
Hold on a second. Go ahead.
So I just had a question, and going off with what Mark said, is that, but basically if you're looking for funding and you're looking for grant money and things like that, that all has to go through the voters, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
the select board always has to vote to apply and then accept said funding. That's correct.
Right.
No, wait a minute. I don't think that's what you just said.
So, no, I'm just saying, like, Mark was saying, like, I understand that we make the decision on the priority list, but when it comes time to, the voters are gonna be the ones that actually vote on
Oh,
if we submit for, like, say, the sidewalk. They have to vote to use the money that our down payment is,
Hang
correct?
on, Joe, go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, your annual warrant typically has an article on it that allows the board through the administration of the town to apply for grants and execute them. So town meeting, the legislative body doesn't approve it, but they typically approve it in a blanket fashion. They'll do it through that warrant article and essentially give you policy power to do that from your table.
Cindy?
I would think, the one thing I didn't hear you mention, Daryl, as far as this, this list of potential public projects would be those identified in the comprehensive plan. Because I think that, folks who worked on that comprehensive plan and are aware of it, that's going to, they're gonna wanna hear that we are referring and following the wishes in the comprehensive plan.
well said, Cindy. It really is in there because in order to even do the downtown plan, we went through all of the recommendations from the town's updated comprehensive plan. So a lot of the sections, whether it's to revitalize the community or look at our zoning issues, look at those in housing and recreation and green space and all those things. Yeah, we did factor that in, but we certainly in the narrative, just to cover all of our bases, make some more reference to the comprehensive plan as well as the downtown revitalization plan from 2019. I'd be happy to do that if you think that would be warranted.
I do. And before I go to Mark, since I can't see two people's hands, I'll ask you. Laura Reynolds, any question?
Nope,
Okay.
I'm set, thank you.
Okay, Kayla? Okay, Rebecca, any questions?
I
Okay.
I don't have any questions, but the valuation, the estimating the valuation at the meeting we had the other day, I think a couple of us felt that the estimations were kind of high and possibly unrealistic. Matt, the assessor, looked at a 0.48% increase per year over the last 11 years. So we kind of incorporated that. And I mean, depending on when infrastructure goes in, I mean, it of course depends on what amount of money revenue we will get. I mean, if it's the first year, that would be absolutely fantastic, best case scenario. But if it's the 9th year, the 10th year, I just think that there's infrastructure that we have to have in place, like broadband and certain things to make this TIF a complete success.
Okay, thank you. You got another question, Mark?
Yes, this is for Alyssa. I'll refer to section 3.05. You had touched on the credit enhancement agreement. And to encourage developers, they can, the town can give them a benefit equal to 100% of the tax amount. And then on the last section of that paragraph, it talks about the town may also enter into construction contracts and civil agreements, you know, that in the public facilities improvements list, and the tax break wouldn't really apply there. So I was having trouble envisioning how that might work. I didn't know if you could give me an example. And
Yeah, that provision is intended to be broader than just credit enhancement agreements, which provide a reimbursement. It's really just meant to cover any types of agreements that the town would enter into that relate to the TIF district, whether it's use of the town's TIF revenues for a credit enhancement agreement with a developer, which would be a reimbursement arrangement, or it could be use of the town's TIF revenues for its own public project costs that are listed in table number 1. And so the last sentence is really about agreements that the town would enter into with contractors or other parties, and would pay those contractors or other parties through the use of TIF revenues for those projects and for that work to be completed. but it wouldn't in and of itself be the same type of arrangement as a credit enhancement agreement.
Okay, thank you. That explains that quite well. And if I could, it seems like this assessor is going to have quite a bit more work keeping up with this program than he presently does, which I'm sure he's going to want to be paid for. And I noticed in this, there's provisions to allow the town to pay departments for increased cost in administering this program. And I was wondering how that works. Does on the assessors, you know, his salary, any increase in his salary, would that be attributed to you know, the work on this tip, and you know, he gets paid out of one of those funds that this money is put into, one of these reserve accounts, or you know, if the highway department ends up doing it, do they actually bill the tip accounts, or does it get built into their budget? You know, I just didn't know what kind of mechanism would work to allow this tip district to pay for these increased costs of administering this stuff.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that one. The many municipalities essentially build it into the budget, and they just prorate amounts coming from the TIF revenues, from the designated fund of the TIF revenues to various, whether it's a departmental budget, a salary, a line item, whatever the case may be. Most of them are not, you know, invoicing or billing themselves. You could absolutely do that, especially to, you know, create a record if you wanted to be very clear about how you're prorating things. But in the alternative, the more common practice is simply to transfer funds or appropriate funds and, you know, apportion them as you see fit, whether it's related to work on project costs or administration of the development program or economic development activities, those types of things. And those are just appropriate authorized project costs. So you're authorized to simply expend them and appropriate them from the fund directly to whether it's a budget line item or otherwise as a result.
Would it be appropriate for us to have language in this document that identifies administrative funding?
Yes, and I'm just looking because I think that we already included it. I just want to point you to it. You'll see it on item C in table number 1. It shows administrative costs. And so that's charges for time spent by municipal employees in connection with the implementation, organizational costs. Those are the types of costs that we'd be envisioning here.
And Stephen, I could add to that too, with the TIFs that I've been involved with, we have some of those same categories listed for professional services, administrative costs. And I work closely with the town managers in putting together a proposed TIF budget of how we utilize some of those TIF funds as we look at what the capture would be for the year upcoming. So that matches up once the tax commitment is made in September, October 1, we pretty much know what we're doing with the TIF funds. And we have the sheets that will list those budgets. And I think I shared that with you, Joe, to show how we did those, right?
Yeah. I don't have a copy of it, Chair, but I've seen how that's transferred back.
But I think Mark brings up a good point, though, as we come into budget season here in the next couple of months. Obviously, it's not going to impact us in this next budget cycle because we can't identify a relative cost, but we should be able to at least suggest in the narrative somewhere. This is very, in my opinion, C on page 5 is very broad, but it doesn't identify who and what, in my opinion, but maybe that language is satisfactory to you all.
Well, I think one of the things we could do, Stephen, is we have the broad categories listed on table 1 on those 2 pages, but certainly another paragraph in the narrative could drill down a little bit and put, you know, professional costs for assessing or engineering or certain costs. We could make reference to that in the narrative after the bulleted items that lists some of the categories for that.
Okay. Anything else? Are you winding up or are you all set? Cindy,
I'm good. I'm good at this point.
anything over here? Mark, you all set for a minute?
Okay.
All right, Alyssa, carry on.
Great, thanks. So really, we're in onto next steps. So based on our past two meetings and this discussion. Oops, sorry, I didn't know if someone had something. I just saw the yellow box around your screen. So we are working towards now finalizing this draft of the development program. The goal is to have that in a final draft form at least 10 days before the public hearing, which we'll talk about. And so we can make some additional revisions based on this discussion tonight and any other feedback that we receive between now and then, and work towards getting this in as final a format as possible. And so the goal is to hold a public hearing on December 8th. That would be the evening on which you hold the public hearing. And then after the public hearing, you can also vote to adopt the TIF district and development program. So if that is in fact the date, you could set the date this evening at your meeting, and we would use that to prepare the public hearing notice and make sure that that gets published at least 10 days in advance as required by the statute, and make sure that our development program is on file with the clerk's office in case any members of the public are interested in reviewing it, also at least 10 days prior to that public hearing date. So with the Thanksgiving holiday, I think we probably want to add a couple of days in there. The technical 10-day deadline is November 27th or 28th, but that falls on a Saturday. And then of course, Thursday and Friday before that are Thanksgiving and the day after. So I think Wednesday, the 25th should be our target deadline here for the 10-day public hearing notice and for the final draft of this development program. And that's what we'll be working toward after this evening. And then beyond that, you would hold your public hearing on December 8th. You could take the vote to adopt the development program and district at that meeting if you were so inclined to do so. Assuming that you did so on the 8th, we would then move forward with the timeline as we've planned all along so far, that warrant article language would be prepared December 14th. You would approve the warrant for the March 9th meeting on December 21st. That would then be available for the clerk in early January. Then we would follow on the traditional town meeting process in terms of absentee ballots, the vote, and then ultimately the application to DECD. So we're at sort of the critical juncture of finalizing the development program and forwarding that on to a public hearing if you are so inclined.
Anything to add, Joe?
So the board, I don't know if you're aware, Alyssa, the board has actually scheduled that public hearing for December 8th. They did that at their last meeting, so that.
Oh, okay, great.
That has been scheduled. So just in terms of housekeeping, let's talk about what they should do tonight. Should they take any action tonight ahead of that public hearing, or should they just bring this draft document with them to the public hearing, and then, as you said, possibly vote to adopt it pending any public comment on that date?
Yeah, it's already been set, then I would say there's nothing that needs to be done tonight in terms of formal action. We'll just continue to work on the draft and get that in final form. We'll make sure the notice gets in the paper, and then the next action of the board would be on December 8th to hold the public hearing and then subsequently to vote one way or another on the district.
And one thing we are going to do tonight, Alyssa, is I'm going to ask the board to make a motion to make this development plan available to the public.
Great.
Okay?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Anything else?
No, I think we're probably required to anyway, and we can always schedule more. We can always schedule more public informational meetings after, prior to March, the day of voting.
Anything, John? No? Yes, Mark.
It mentions in there that choice of the newspaper is the Mountain Messenger, and that's fine. I think the town ought to err on the side of caution and put it in multiple outlets there so that, you know, if there's a section of people that choose not to read the Mountain Messenger because they come in everybody's post office box, but you see the recycle bin is full of them there. So we might want to try some other sources as well.
Yes. Anything from Rebecca? Okay, Kayla, anything from you?
No, thank you.
Laura?
All set, thanks.
Okay, Daryl, final comments?
I've been around a few of these TIFs. They really work well for the community. So I applaud you taking all of these process steps and having very good feedback. I will make some of those adjustments, you know, to the development program, and we'll keep focused on the positive and move this forward. I think it's going to help with some of the development activities for the community. Thanks, Stephen.
Final comments, Alyssa?
Nothing for me.
All right, thank you both for participating.
Could I ask Alyssa one more question?
Hang on, wait, Mr. Borga.
On the section about establishing a permanent economic development revolving loan fund or investment funds, I was just curious, who manages those? Does the town partner with the local bank? Do they set up their own thing? Does the economic development group do it? You know, I just was wondering how those things function.
Yeah, there are, you know, a number of options, so it's really up to the town, but typically it's an economic development, whether it's a commission or a committee. It can also be administered internally by staff. You'll have, you know, likely a relationship with a local bank for that, but this authorizes the town to set one up. There will then be, and should be, additional documents that actually govern that loan program in terms of eligibility and administration. So those decisions can be, there can be and should be more discussion about those decisions in terms of how the program will actually operate.
Thank you.
Cindy?
I would think that the whole purpose of the TIF would be to avoid borrowing. So would it be an internal process? I mean, that's kind of where my mind's, I was thinking was that, you know, this is appealing because we won't have to borrow money and pay interest. We already have funds set aside for all of those categories.
That's correct, Cindy. We would, in the TIF budget, we would say, we'll dedicate so much of this in a TIF revolving loan fund. So the funds would already be captured for that. But then, as Alyssa said, we would set up the TIF guidance and the bylaws for the actual loan, how that would happen internally through the town. And I've managed 5 or 6 of those different types of revolving loan funds.
Thank you.
But I think that, Steve, with what you brought up as far as the administrative matter, it's, are you asking for, or was your point like there needs to be a policy, like there needs to be, if administrative costs, if the TIF affects other parts of town and employee time, are you asking that there be a policy as far as how TIF reimburses the town for that?
I think we need a policy for reimbursement. We also need to be able to identify from an accounting standpoint how much money various departments it's costing various departments to participate in this program. So we need to be able, from a budgetary standpoint, we need to understand, not this coming year, obviously,
Right.
we don't have any background in this.
Right.
Or any, but next year's budget process, which you all have to deal with, there will be a historical component as to how much it costs Rebecca to work on this, Joe to work on this, etc.
Yeah.
And money has to come out of TIF to reimburse, or it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, and that administrative paragraph is beautifully vague.
But very good.
Yeah, so that we could, as long as it's legal. I mean, we don't want, we don't want this end up costing.
Alyssa, does this raise any flags to you? And then I'll get right to you, Daryl.
No, I actually, what I would say is that the way that I typically view this is that the development program itself is your enabling legislation, I'll call it. It's giving you the authority to do these things. And then the mechanics and specifics and policies as to how you do that are things that you can and should develop. You don't necessarily have to include the details of those in the development program, since you're authorizing yourselves to, that's sort of a broad category of project cost, which is why it's written the way that it is at this point. And I would encourage you to, in following that, if the development program gets adopted, to then create the types of policies that you're discussing, which you can do at the board level to identify how you're really going to implement these particular project costs.
Anything else to add, Daryl?
Yeah, I concur with what Alyssa said, and I would work closely with Joe and department heads in formulating their project needs and determining which portions of some of these projects might be able to be offset budgetarily at the local level by utilizing those TIF funds that pass the straight face test, that it allows. So, and again, I look forward to doing that because we've done that in the other TIFs that I've worked with, and it's done a lot, whether it's for different water, sewer, infrastructure, sidewalks, streetscapes, facade programs. There's certainly a way to do that to, if anything, it'll help support your budgetary goals for the town.
Thank you. All set? No? Last call. Anybody else have anything to bring up? Okay, I appreciate everybody participating tonight. It's got 20 minutes before the selectmen's meeting. We'll call the public hearing again at 20 minutes to 6. Thanks again, everyone. I appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
So,
Bring up good points, Mark. Thank you. Join me for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It is our tradition to have a moment of silence for those men and women in uniform and those folks who are fighting COVID-19. Thank you. I'd like to call the meeting to order at 2 minutes after 6, and it's with great pleasure. The second item on our agenda tonight is a proclamation that we would like to give to Ella Schaefer. And if you'll allow me the opportunity, I'd like to read this to you all. If you can't hear me out in Zoom land, replay it later on. This proclamation reads as follows. Whereas it is the intention of the Board of Selectmen to focus attention on noteworthy occasions and individuals. And whereas RSU 78 Poetry Out Loud's Ella Schaefer, coached by Mr. Timothy Straub and mentored by Mrs. Kate Philbrick, sought to increase awareness in the art of performing poetry, placed as State of Maine champion and national competitor. And whereas RSU 78 Poetry Out Loud's Ella Schaefer, Mr. Straub, and Mrs. Philbrick worked together in practice to develop skills, expressiveness that prepared Ella to advance to the regional and state competitions. And whereas Rangeley is home to many accomplished students who set an impressive standard by their hard work, dedication, sportsmanship, the Board of Selectmen wish to commend the students and coaches on their impressive achievement of Poetry Out Loud State Champion. Now, therefore, by virtue of the power of authority vested in us, Board of Selectmen, for the town of Rangeley, County of Franklin, State of Maine, we do hereby proclaim Monday, March 23rd as a day of recognition for the Rangeley Lakes Regional School Poetry Out Loud competition, Ella Schaefer, and ask all our citizens to join us in extending our deepest congratulations to both the participant and their coaches on a great job. This is going to be embarrassing, but I must say, we have all seen Rangeley grow in many different ways, and we've all seen some very accomplished students come and go. And I'm very glad to make this presentation to you because we haven't done this enough. And I'm very happy to have you here. And if you don't mind, somebody grab the camera and come up and stand in front of the board of selectmen so we can give this to you. Got hand the camera over to somebody. I know it's, yep, stand right here and I'll hand this to you. And if you look right over to. There's no sense smiling, you got a bloody mask on. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Okay. I wasn't here for the minutes last time anyway, so. Okay. Yep, we're gonna carry on and get you when you come back, okay? Very good. In all seriousness, this town has produced some incredible students. And unfortunately, their accolades have not been touted to the degree they should have been. I'm glad you did this. Adjustments to the agenda. On item number 10, mark down December 8th public hearing. We'll bring it up under item 10 in between 7 and 21 on your calendar of events. Is there anything else, Joe? Okay. I need a motion to approve the November 2nd, 2020 regular meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Monday, October 5th regular meeting minutes of the Board of Selectmen with any corrections or revisions.
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. Any changes? All in favor? Thank you. Public to speak. Mark, do you have anything? Peter Andrews out there in Zoom land. Anything to say on the public to speak?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
I sent an email to the town after a very unsatisfying conversation with a customer service rep with Consolidated about internet. And I understand that there's going to be a presentation on December 7th. And you know, as I'm complaining about it, I guess I'm offering to participate in any way that helps the town. We've been at Quimby Pond camps for 15 years, and we do actually have DSL there. We bought another place on Wheatland, and it's just kind of shameful that there's not any DSL service over on the loop there. So again, any way I can help, I'd be perfectly happy to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll have the town manager make a note of that.
Thanks.
So noted. Appreciate it. Kayla, anything from you?
No,
Rebecca, anything from Rebecca?
No, nothing.
Okay, thank you. Next item, boards and committees. We have the minutes from the planning board. Questions or comments on that? Yes.
I just didn't need to, it looks like they've been really busy reviewing the land use table. And I just didn't know, I mean, AvCog has been involved with other revisions with town code, Tom, and they're coming to speak regarding form-based code to one of our future meetings. Is this something that AvCog should assist the planning board with, just in, for their protection, for
So, Mr. Chair, the AvCog is working with Bailey on this, and Bailey is working with the planning board and the ordinance committee on both of those things. So AvCog is still involved in this process. Would Mr. Chair, would the board like the AvCog to speak on this briefly when they do the presentation for form-based code? Just to give you a brief update?
I guess if there's a trend we need to be made aware of or whatnot, then, it might be worth a comment from them. Just with, some events that happened this past summer, I just want to make sure they're protected.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So is that translate? You'd like a presentation?
I guess just a summary of changes.
All right. Fair enough. Thank you. Where we are here is boards and committees. The question is, any questions or comments? That he's asking for an update on AvCog's participation Anything you'd like to bring up? Kelly? Okay, thank you. Consent items, let's start with liquor license for the Blue Orchid, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve the liquor license renewal for the Blue Orchid located at 2473 Main Street.
Second. Moved and seconded. Questions? Concerns? All in favor? Thank you. Event permit, Giving Tree. Please note that there is no date because it's going to be a virtual. Am I correct on that, Joe? Be virtual.
Correct, Mr. Chairman, it will be virtual and they'll be taping it ahead of time and then making it available to the public in that way. So they have not pinned down a date, but it's coming up soon.
Need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the event permit application for the Giving Tree of Rangeley to conduct the tree lighting ceremony in the town park.
Second. All in favor? Thank you. We have a request for an appointment for the Rangeley Region Economic Opportunity Committee. Beth Eastlack. Need a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the request for appointment for the Rangeley Region Economic Development Committee submitted by Beth Eastlack for a 3-year term.
Second. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. We don't have any correspondence. Old business. We had a public meeting earlier this evening at 5 o'clock for the TIP updates. For those of Zoom land and here in the audience, I asked the board if we could get a motion to adopt the development, to make the development plan available for the public here at the town office.
So moved.
Thank you, Shelley. Need a second.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Thank you. Just to make sure that you're all aware regarding the TIF, there will be another public hearing. We encourage everybody to get this draft. I guess everybody is you, Mr. Andrews, so come get the draft and get up to speed on it. Mr. Beauregard is here with us. He's up to speed and asked some very good questions. It'll be held on December 8th. Next up is, there is no new business. You have your department head updates. You have your finance department summary sheet and also the more involved documentation in your packet. Stop me if you have some questions as we move through or comments. Okay. Calendar, we are requesting the draft budget timeline. You'll see that here in your packet. Next up is December 10th, December 7th at 5 p.m. consolidated broadband presentation. That's here at 5 p.m. on December 7th. The TIP hearing, December 8th. We start at 5 o'clock for that. Be here in the boardroom. Also available in Zoom, all of these meetings. December 21st at 5 p.m. AVCOG, form-based code. Also here. Other business. Yeah, we're going to have an evaluation for Chief Bacon. We're going to schedule that January 4th in executive sessions. Please mark that down.
January 4th, you said?
January 4th.
Thank you.
So the sheet that you have, the sheets that you have here is your guidelines, excuse me, for that meeting, annual evaluation. Questions? Comments, concerns?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I believe the time, it was 5 p.m. on the 4th.
I know that's an executive session.
Executive, oh, you're gonna do it regular time?
The evaluation?
Yep.
We talked earlier, we're doing that in executive session.
Correct. Did you want to begin at 5 or 6?
You had said 5 in the office and then do it before the regular.
Oh, I apologize. In our discussions, we had reverted to the executive session after the meeting.
Okay, after the meeting.
After the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Unless you all want to do it earlier.
It might be good to get it out of the way for the chief.
I'm fine with that, either way, yeah.
Okay.
Want to do it at 5?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it at 5. Better yet. Good point, thank you. I have a copy of the governor's recent executive order. Just a couple of points I want to bring out to the public out there. We're only allowed 10 people in this room. We are going to have a discussion in just a few moments about Zooming and how everybody, what's everybody's comfort zone, so on and so forth. But the governor's recent executive orders in your packet. Have any questions for Joe or Tracy or anybody on that? Okay. We're not doing appointments only at the town office. I talked with the staff to see that's working out fine. You want any comment on any of that at all?
No, it's working fine, Mr. Chair. Folks can call ahead and get a spot. And we internally, we have controls for, booking this room and so forth so that we don't run into problems with crowding and so forth.
Anything? Okay, select board communications, before we get into the 2 bullet points, anybody have anything under select board communications they'd like to bring up?
I received an email, and I believe the town office did, I don't know if you spoke about it already. Mr. Andrews sent an email.
Yeah, he brought it up.
Okay,
Okay,
so I missed that part, but that was all I had.
thank you. Cindy?
I'm all set, Steve, thank you.
Shelley? Okay, very good. So, future meetings, maintain like we're doing, Zoom it. What's your thoughts? I'm going to start with you, Shelley.
I think that,
Louder.
I know, I'm thinking that eventually we might keep them as they are now, and then if something changes with the orders, to change that up. It's just really hard being out in the Zoom world to hear.
Okay. Either.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I like seeing people in the meetings, and as long as we're following the appropriate guidelines we're supposed to, then we can do it the best we can.
Yeah, I agree as well. We'll just evaluate as we go along and certainly if we see another uptick in Rangeley, we might want to do our own thing for our own sake.
Okay. It's my intent to continue to be in this building for each meeting and try not to Zoom from another location. I don't think that's appropriate for the chair personally. It's difficult I can't imagine trying to get everybody's attention if I'm out there on that screen. So it's my intention to be here. As I had suggested to a couple of you earlier, there are a couple of dates that may be in question for me in terms of my presence here, but I will be Zooming in. At that point, my plan is to have Cindy run the meetings if she's here. Okay. The next thing up is tables. Oh, excuse me. Before we get to that, I want to talk about tables. Are you comfortable with this configuration, the way we are right now? Because we're not meeting the guidelines.
The first question was, are we comfortable? Yes, I'm comfortable. As far as guidelines, we can discuss that afterwards.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. All right, I'm even more comfortable. You missed that, Mark.
You don't
that
see-
was a little.
You don't see genuine Germex very often, so
All right.
you got some in front of you.
I'm comfortable. Think it over and email me before the next meeting if you'd like to see us facilitate a change in location in here, okay? Feedback on the tablets.
Scoot down to the end, just to create more space if that,
But, I just feel it's important we discuss it,
yeah, I agree.
all right? Feedback on the tablets, you comfortable with them? Everything working good?
I got mine to work. That's my first thing.
Yeah, they're easy. I just have to train myself to go after them to check emails, because I'm used to
Absolutely.
Tracy sending them and they're going off in my pocket and I can answer them right away. So that's just a little Ethan training that has to happen.
Okay. Cindy,
Yeah, no.
you obviously fell right into it and
Yeah, no, I've, got the calendar up and I just, yeah, it would be nice to be able to download like the comprehensive plan on the tablet and whatnot, anything, any other pertinent ongoing documents that, are relevant to the.
Are those things you could pull up through the town of Rangeley website?
I tried with, like,
Comprehensive plan is not on
it might be buried.
it. Well, I haven't been able to find it.
Yeah, it might, the comprehensive plan might be buried, but like with all the work that the planning board was doing, I was trying to like download the code and just see the table and,
Right.
but instead of like going back and forth or, so it's, and I wasn't able to download the town code,
Okay.
the entire document.
Well, the book of code, I don't believe is available. Is it?
It's available on the website. You can just pull up, I've got,
You have to pull it by section.
yeah, you have to pull
By
it by,
chapter.
yeah. So like I've got the chapter 38 zoning up, which was helpful to see what, I just X'd out of it. Yeah, I just wasn't able to download it, that's all.
So everybody is satisfactory?
Yeah.
Happy up to this point?
Mhm.
Okay.
I
Yes.
just have one question. Do we or should we have some kind of policy on what can be downloaded and what can't be downloaded on the tablets? I know through where I work.
There is an electronics policy. I was made aware of that a few moments ago, So
Is that in the
take a
media
peek,
one?
yeah, take a peek at that, seriously.
Okay.
We have signed on to an electronics policy.
Yeah, media policy.
Yeah, media policy.
Media
Yeah.
policy.
Right, but I'm talking about like if you have a document that they ask you to download or you get upgrades and like, is that something that you will email us that we can do the upgrade?
You mean the updates?
Yeah,
I just keep updating because it's gonna send them to you for forever. It's the software company, Samsung. They're constantly gonna want you to update the thing or it's not gonna run right.
okay.
Mine does it automatically. I don't know what the rest of
As long as you're within internet access.
Yeah, exactly. The minute you're next to internet access and plugged in, the downloads are done.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's just updating. I think you're referring to confidential items, things of that nature?
I'm talking about like, if you like, you can't like download video games or.
Oh.
That type of.
No, that's
We don't
media
have to.
policy.
Yeah.
I just wanted the football scores and Cindy shut me down on that one right off the bat. It was real simple. I didn't think it was an egregious aspect of the contract. Okay. Anything else?
No, you want to sit back and watch it.
Well,
I'm not sure you
you
want.
noticed I closed it because I would have been curious.
Oh.
All right. If nothing else, call the meeting to an end and need a motion.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. All right, we have an executive session. I need motion. Oh, shoot.